I'll talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it. We have to. I'm sorry. I need to call you out.
I gotta go. I think I hear my mom calling me.
It started leaking, and at first we thought maybe someone overflowed the pond, and then we were like, maybe someone overwatered some of the plants, and then we were just like, maybe it's just a leak from the rain, and then it ended up being no. There was no way around it. It was leaking. And I tried my hardest to blame Brian. Anthony, I was doing everything to deflect it away from you. And I was like, well, maybe you didn't patch those holes right. And he was just like, nope, it's definitely the plumbing. And it was the plumbing. I guess the bulkhead, he said that it was just an old bulkhead. Do you know if that was a recycled one?
I think it was. Yeah. Okay. Mark brought all the pieces and Kevin, Minto, and I just went with it. We were just like, okay, got it. And when we were putting it together too, I was really self-conscious because when we were putting it together, I had a guilty conscience, I should say, after the fact, because when we were putting it together, there was a very finite amount of time. It was like 0 degrees outside. We're going out and like chiseling things out of the ice and snow to use for the build. And we didn't have a ton of time to like beat traffic and get home that day. And we both took the day off from work to be there and do it. So I can remember when we were doing the plumbing, I was like trying to work through it. And Minto's like, oh, it's going to be fine. I'm like, I don't know. And I kind of let him twist my arm. But it's not his fault. I was the one who was on it. And I should have said, no, I'm looking right at it right now. And I'm not confident. But we just went with it. And here we are.
I didn't realize you guys took the day off to do that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, it was great. I mean, we made a video out of it. It's one of those ones, too. YouTube is so weird. When you make something you're really excited about, sometimes it doesn't always translate. So that was one of those. The wood turtle video that I recently did with Steve was one of those where like I was so excited and then did get a lot of traction. But I don't care. That was a cool one. Both of those were cool.
It was.
Yeah, I liked it. Oh, you're almost YouTube famous now, by the way, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've got 2,000 viewers, right? Or subscribers?
3,400 maybe. But it's growing steadily, but it's just baby.
Hit or miss on the views, apparently.
What's that?
There's a lot of I said hit or miss on the views, apparently.
Yeah, it's just like that.
You know what you should try doing especially with the map turtle videos is like it is so long. Like I wonder if you can break certain chunks out into little shorts. But
oh yeah, that's happening already.
I just grab little snippets.
The first short the first short went out today.
Oh, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Speaking of things leaking, Sunday a week ago, in the evening, Lisa was like, "There's water over here." So the filter on the aquarium in the family room apparently was leaking. Let me get those over there. Sorry about that.
I distracted you.
Nice catch.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's all right. But yeah, so that was the last of the Rena XP 4s that I had, and so it is now fully decommissioned, and I put a new intake, built new intakes and outputs, and put an FX4 onto that on Saturday morning. So it was a project that I was intending to knock out this summer anyway. It just gained priority by the filter leaking everywhere. So
that's the end of an era.
It is. I have one Rena left, but it's an XP3. So I'm not, and that one's not quite as simple of a replacement. So, because it doesn't need an FX size thing going on that tank. So I'll have to figure that one out in the future, but yeah.
So what is the brand? It's smaller than an FX. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the Rena XP filters, there were 4 different sizes of them, and the XP4 is about the equivalent filtration level as like an FX4. Okay. Right. The FX6 is then like a good bit bigger.
I love the 6.
But yeah, I run 6s. I used to run Renas on everything, and now at this point, everything like all my big map turtle tanks have a 6 and a 4 on them.
Oh, wow.
And then I use some 4s and some 2s in some other places.
What gallons?
Sorry. The stock tanks are 150s.
Really? Wow. Your water has got to be pristine because I'm using FX6s on like 300 gallons.
Look at Anthony's eyes. He's seen it.
When I'm there, I get thirsty because I'm staring at clear running water, and I'm like, man, I just want to take a drink. Think about it.
The ponds in your greenhouse don't look like that, Anthony?
A little bit different, a little stagnant, a little
Like
smelly. A dragonfly would love the ponds in my greenhouse. And they do actually. They come in all the time.
Yeah.
When I leave the door open.
All right. Apparently only Ralph's going to talk to us tonight, but we do have a few viewers on. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Thanks for joining in the chat already, Ralph. And let's get this rolling. Excited to talk about tonight.
Welcome to the Pondcast, the TurtleRoom show, where the hurts are cool and knowledge flows. Turtles, tortoises, and conservation too. Stories of the wild brought right to you. Research, rescue, education galore. Saving wildlife is what we're here for. With Anthony, Steve, and Emily, it's turtles, it's tortoises, and all things herpetology.
Hey.
Awesome.
Hey.
That's awesome. I forgot how good that intro is.
I was feeling it this time more than usual. I don't know why.
Right?
Felt
that was
right.
good. Welcome back, everybody.
I was gonna go ahead and do that, and you just did it. Episode
It's all you.
122.
Yep.
We didn't talk about this ahead of time. We didn't have a plan.
We usually do. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. Normally we talk about that. I was on late too this time, and then Steve didn't notice me, and he left me in the waiting room. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. That really happened. Welcome to the Pondcast. We have a really exciting episode. Chris Lekowitz is with us. Obviously, we have Emily and Steve, of course. Chris Lekowitz is with us again. You're becoming, maybe you're going to be like the next Chris Leone, who we have on again and again. You get like the I think this is your third time officially, because you came on that one time when we had the round robin and gave everyone like 10 minutes or whatever.
So it's a Chris thing.
I know SNL does this thing where they give like a jacket, like the 5 timers jacket.
Yeah.
Whoever's hosted SNL 5 times or more, whatever. And we also are joined by Damon Barnes as well, who is who's become a real friend of a lot of us here in the turtle loving saving world. And he's got some really interesting, useful, impressive skills that he'll be putting towards a project that we're really excited to share with you tonight. But first, Steve, you just had that thing up on screen. Let's just pull it up right now.
I thought it was going to pull it up off screen first, so we'll just start with that item. It was going to be item number 2, I think. But
what is this, Steve? Tell us about it.
So you should have seen this over the last 12 days on our social media, email, whatever. But we're running a t-shirt campaign until midnight tonight. I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see the counter right there. 4 hours, 50 minutes, and 53.21 seconds from this moment. This campaign helps support work we're doing with the conservation, or the Center for Technology and Nature Conservation in Vietnam. It's going to the proceeds are going to fund Cora pictorata research. We'll be putting radio trackers on them, figuring out how they're using these forests that they live in. So we'll identify some critical habitat areas, work with local authorities to improve protection and enforcement, etc. So far we've sold 80 shirts. We'd love to sell 100, 20 more in the next 4, almost 5 hours is going to be a big sell. But we've also gotten around $350 worth of donations so far as well. So thank you for this. We've got some grants already approved and some other grants already out there to kind of cover this project, but any little bit helps. And so I'm pretty excited about this design. Anthony and I are really happy with how it turned out. So hop on there, check out the Protect What's Rare shirt. And if you love Cora pictorata, you're gonna love this shirt, I think. So,
yeah, that's exciting. Thanks so much for sharing, giving such a nice rundown. The shirt is beautiful. The species is beautiful. You know it. I'd like to know from you in the chat, I'm just going to tell you because I don't have access to the chat, but I bought 2 shirts. If you've bought any, let us know in the chat. Let's get the sharing going. And if you buy any tonight, let us know in the chat because when that happens, because we want to be able to celebrate that because that's wonderful. And this money is going directly to the range country. Now, I don't know for anyone who's knows me personally, I'm not the type of person who likes to ask for money. I don't do the birthday fundraiser thing and all that all the time. Like I really don't like soliciting funds unless I really feel like it's the right move and it makes a real lot of sense. And to me, this makes a real lot of sense. So we've got great partners, boots on the ground in Vietnam. Steve, you called it Vietnam. You always pronounce things right. Is it Vietnam? Are you and Forrest Gump right? And I'm wrong on this one? Okay. I think there's silence.
I've heard it both ways.
Okay. And yeah, so again, boots on the ground, support it. It's going right to the range country, to amazing people that are doing amazing work there. So thank you.
I love when we talk about the conservation work that we do. It makes me so happy.
Me too.
Proud. Yeah. We had another
Thanks,
quick
Phil.
item we wanted to bring up, and it was a mini celebration. It was for Steve. Steve had a record-breaking number this year. Steve, tell us about your record breaker.
So last year, my number was 90 eggs, and that was the whole season. And this year, as of the last nest I dug up, I was at 114 and still counting because it's only the beginning of June. So
Ooh.
pretty crazy. I think I had 2 more lay today. So as soon as we're done here tonight, I'm going to be down there digging up hopefully 2 more nests. In fact, the nest I dug up, I think it was Saturday, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one of them that I'll dig up today, that's the 4th of the year for each of those turtles. So they're just cranking them out. So yeah, really exciting. It's far surpassed already last year by 25 eggs, and I still have a month to go. So it's kind of wild. Really looking forward to finishing that new hatchling area because it's going to be needed with this many turtles. So the upgrades are going to be important.
That's awesome. And then I'll just ask one more real quick question because I don't want to leave Damon and Chris hanging. Anthony, what are you up to for egg count this year?
That's a good question. I think I'm up to 17 clutches and 37 eggs, which is not much, but I always am a very, very late starter. So it really just started for me officially like this week where I started to get a couple clutches in a day, that sort of thing. For me, it's mid-June through maybe the first week of August is when I really get a lot of eggs. So we're not there yet.
He'll pass me eventually. Chris has, 200 or something at this point?
No, I don't have that many.
No, 150?
Yeah, I think I'm above that.
Okay.
It sounds like he's not counting, which means he probably has more than he realizes.
Yeah.
No,
I'm at 7, guys. 7. So
That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
Just saying. Next podcast, I should be in a much different spot.
All right.
Yeah.
It's not a competition, guys.
It is.
It's not.
I'm competing against myself, though.
That's it.
I keep
Always
a
competing
detailed
against my
list.
previous year.
I keep a detailed list of who lays what, when, and then what eggs are fertile, so I know exactly what percentage of my eggs were fertile.
Yeah.
And I want to beat the amount of eggs I got the year before, the amount of hatchlings I got the year before. And when you're working with something like spider tortoises, then those, like I have 199 hatchlings from last year, but I still have 1 egg incubating from last year. So I could hit 200, but we'll see. That egg's like going to take like a year to hatch, like literally 360 full days to hatch probably because it took 3 cooldowns. Anyway.
There's a lot of patience.
Yeah. Well, what's fun about that, though, is that you have eggs throughout the winter and you don't have to actually, stop the season. I know I've talked about that in the podcast before, so I'll shut up.
Mm-hmm. Damon, do you have anything you want to celebrate? I don't want to leave you out of the celebration.
Well, I only have 1 ground hatched eastern box turtle from last year because it's
Woo!
Yeah, which is nice because they took a 2-year break from being moved. But my enclosure is 60 by 20. That they're in. So they're not nesting where I made them to nest. I can't figure out quite where they're nesting, but I also put, I don't know, like 20 side-by-side loads of leaf litter in it at the end of last year. So it makes it quite difficult. I have actually only incubated those eggs one time because
Yeah.
for the most part, a lot of times I just let them ground hatch. I mean, I'm in
Yeah.
the native range. And then, I have a lot of Arosa that like to practice constantly and not give me eggs. I have three, I have three trios that every time I spray them, they go at it, and still yet to get an egg there. But that's all I have of breeding age. I could probably pair my Connexus Specca together, but I just haven't yet. It's just more of trying to still shift some things around because I built a house and had a lot of things going on during that build and moved and all that. And just really now, like over the winter, finally had things set up how I want them. And then, of course, now, now they're set up how I want them, it's time to rearrange and figure out how to get other stuff. And I'm constantly screwing around with the 3D printer. So I'm playing with new enclosures and just designs. But yeah, like I said, that's the only things that I have of breeding age are the box turtles and the Arosa.
Okay.
Can I jump in? I just want to say, we're talking about what do you have to celebrate, Damon, and you brought up the Eastern box turtles, and I just want to say that I don't know if this is spoiler alert or anything, but you wrote an article that will be published on Eastern box turtles that will be published in the Batager this year, and that's your first turtle article, right?
That is my first turtle article, first
Nice.
published article, maybe. I think I might have got something published in the local newspaper when I was in high school, but we're not going to count that. So
Well,
yeah.
Too, but either way, this is awesome, and you should be very proud. And anyone who's not familiar with what that is, you hopefully should make yourself available. Make yourself familiar with the Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group, TTPG, and at their yearly conference, that Batager newsletter comes out, and we're always so excited to flip through it real quick and see who has articles on what, and people are going to be very excited this year. Maybe less excited now that I spilled the beans, but it's great, and you should be very proud.
I mean, it'll be the worst article in there. So,
Can you give us a mini sneak peek, just a little tidbit?
Yeah. So I like to house things outdoors when possible, and I, gear what I keep towards that. If it can't be house doors, I don't like it to have heat. Now, I do have some things that, as everyone, that goes away from that. I also stay away from things that need massive bodies of indoor water because I used to keep and breed fish for a long time, and I got tired of water. So, I build a lot of enclosures and have now built them at 3 different houses. So I think I've gotten pretty decent at it. And so it's just mainly about how to care for box turtles, not just Easterns, but, kind of the Eastern range of the various subspecies of Carolina that, and just kind of house them naturally. And, some pictures of my enclosures, which it sucks because I had to submit the pictures before they really grew in great this year, because that one was done last year, which I have 2 right now. One of them is in 3 sections though. And then I am working on a massive enclosure for, I have Minoria Emmys Ferri, and I'm working on a really large enclosure for them, like 200 by, I don't even know for sure what the other measurement is. And that's phase 1. I have 7 acres, mostly wooded. So I'm kind of incorporating that woods as I can. And I planted a bunch of native to their range, or close to native in some cases, plants in there. So hopefully they won't destroy them. They'll get big enough where they can kind of be there. But if you've ever dealt with Black Mountains, they eat anything and everything and constantly. But I love them.
And you said you have Connexus too. I just joined the Connexus family. We're gonna have to talk about that after the show.
Yeah, I heard. I have a Arosa and Speaks 18 Arosa, I think. If that's
Wow.
something like that, I'd have to look for sure. 3 trios of adults, and then the 9 juveniles. They're 2-ish. I'd have to look again too. And then the speaks are. I have a lot more juveniles of those. Those were the first ones I got. I heard Jeremy on maybe Pondcast, but definitely a podcast of some form, and reached out to him, and he recommended those for starting. And I went from 3 to 36 pretty quick.
That's crazy.
Which I like them. They don't, mine are all kept at room temp, which is nice. I mean, there is UVB in there, like the Shade Dweller UVB, the really low one. So it gives off a tiny bit of ambient heat, but not much. And it works great for them. They love it at room temp here. I have like a daylight basement, so it's in the back part of the basement. So it's really nice. Keeps the temperature really controlled. The only problem is when I spray them, they're all in stock tanks now. Well, all except for 6 juvenile. They're still in those stuff I 3D printed. But when I spray back there, and then the fair hour in there right now too, it is humid, like humid. One time it set off the fire alarm. It was so humid, which was scary because I sprayed them right before bed, and then a couple hours later the fire alarm goes off, and we realized it. We realized it was from the humidity. I mean, it was hot.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, like I said, I try to avoid massive heat. Now I do have a few things that need heat, but I don't like to deal with the light bulbs.
Yeah, it's cheaper that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're all here. We gathered you all here today to talk about a top secret program. I was thinking about maybe trying to dress the part for something top secret, but I couldn't come up with anything in the time frame. But I saw the post this morning, and I texted Steve and Anthony, and I was like, "Hey guys, what's the secret we're revealing tonight?" And they were like, "Oh right, we should have probably let you in on the loop." But we have a new program. We have a new program. Who would like to introduce the program? How about Anthony? Do you want to talk about it?
I will, Steve, if that's okay. So it would be me or Steve, I think. But I just because, something that we've been looking at for a long time is where we go from here, and wherever here is. Here has it's been kind of stagnant over the past several years with the Turtle Room in terms of our captive programming, because we don't have a facility for animals. A lot of the animals that the Turtle Room folks have are their own. And we got into a spot over the years where people started to recognize folks like myself and Chris Leone and even Steve and others, especially Steve lately, as people who have animals in their basements and that sort of thing. And that's not what the Turtle Room is. The Turtle Room is legitimate in situ conservation programs, and even more so than that, it's education, and that's what we are. So in order for us to do, but at the same time, we were founded around this idea that we have these like 3 pillars. We have the in situ, the ex situ or captive conservation, and then the education piece. So we're really proud and really dedicated to the idea that we want to try to keep all 3 strong and all equal parts important, for our organization. And that's why we're always preaching and talking about reaching across the aisle and trying to work with people that don't see things exactly the same way you do and trying to find common ground. Anyway, we for years have been talking about how do we legitimize our efforts in the captive husbandry side of things. And this is the idea at the top of the list, something that we've been thinking about for a really long time. And I think we even teased it on the podcast. It feels like it was 6 months ago, so it was probably like a year ago. But we have been talking about it and developing it now for a pretty long time. So what we're going to present to you today is that idea, and really excited to do it. Now, Steve, you left me a message.
Oh,
Okay. Which is, so people know, we always tell our guests that Steve puts things in our private chat, and then it gets you all your thought going in a different direction. So
And it distracts us all.
yeah, Steve, why don't you take over from here? I just wanted to give that one little setup because I think it's really important to just share kind of where this stuff comes from and why it's so important.
Yeah, so we're calling it ACTS. Anthony loves a good acronym. I'm a little less on the acronym stuff, but this one worked, and so I said, Anthony, I will give you the acronym. So we're calling it ACTS, Assurance Collaboratives for Turtle Species, and so the name itself describes not only the important elements, the collaboration, and the assurance part that kind of describes it as a captive project, but just the word acts in itself is obviously a very active word, and so we thought it was perfect for this type, for where we're going. So it's called Assurance Collaboratives for Turtle Species, and we're going to be starting with 5 different projects under this full program, and there will be room to expand it going forward. We've got just over 30 individuals that are going to be participating in these programs as we launch.
Yeah, we had a meeting the other day, and it was the first time that we had individual meetings with all of the groups, and we'll get into what the groups are and all of that, but we had a meeting with everyone the other day, and I'm just sitting there and thinking, this is incredible. This is a collection of private keepers who want to take the next step and bring their work to the next level. And it was just for me, it was a wonderful moment to just kind of sit there and just bask in the glory, pun intended, of kind of what was happening. You get that turtle pun? Of what was happening. And it was just great. Morgan, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you at World Wildlife Zoo. I'm not butchering the name of the zoo, am I? I love that zoo. I really do.
And Phil too. Thank you, Phil.
Yes, Phil. And Phil, of course, as well. Yeah, thank you so much for putting that in the chat.
All right. So how about, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of what this looks like more logistically from maybe like a membership standpoint?
Yeah, so to start with, we're invite only. And so essentially we've got a program for 5 different groups: Graptimus, the map turtles, Terrapene quahila, the Quahilan box turtle, Indotestudo forstenii, the Forstens or Sulawesi forest tortoise, Actinemes, which is the Pacific pond turtle genus, and brain fade. The last one is the Egyptian tortoise. The Kleinmani Assurance Program folks are coming on board with the Turtle Room as the 5th one, and in some ways they're the most far along program we have because of all the work these guys have been doing. Anthony's been involved in that work, and in some ways all of that kind of is descendant from some previous stuff, and we'll probably talk a bit more about that in a bit. So anyway, each of these programs is going to be a group of private keepers who are, we'll say, excellent in what they're doing. And so this first wave is all essentially invite only. We've identified people who we've previously gotten to know and trust, not only from a security standpoint, but keepers we know who pursue excellence in everything they're doing. And so I'm actually going to pop this graphic up in a moment here. So you can kind of see, so each group is going to have, a bunch of private keepers that make up their own committee. All right. And each one of those committees will select their own representative to be on what we're going to call the ACTS Council. Essentially, this is going to be a place where all of these groups collaborate together and make decisions together. The idea being that we want as many of these programs to look as alike as possible to make it as easy to participate in as many programs as possible for breeders, for keepers. see if that helps. Anyway, the acts, and then we've got what we're calling the Executive Oversight Committee, which is essentially the four people here on this podcast right now tonight, me, Anthony, Damon, and Chris. And we'll be kind of doing all of the major oversight, coordinating everything with all of the different groups. Damon and I will be developing database tools to manage everything and so on. And then Anthony, since this is part of our captive stuff at the Turtle Room, it's going to be kind of over top of he'll be over top of everything here.
He's like 7 feet tall. He's used to being over the top of everything.
Yeah.
The eye in the sky watches it all.
And I think I figured out what you were hearing. Is that better?
Oh, much better. Yes, you fixed it.
What was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
because I had to reboot my audio when it crapped out on me. The other mic, it switched which mic was actually on, so it was just coming more distantly. So.
I see.
Okay, that was better. I felt like I heard it again, but smaller.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I don't know what noises you're hearing.
Just every once in a while.
That's not coming from here, but yeah, no idea what that is.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm hearing it too, so it's not coming from here. Anyway, at least we solved one problem.
Well, this is
Sorry about that.
These technical difficulties are nothing compared to the technical difficulties of like 2018 to 2021. If we have any really diehard Pondcast viewers, listeners that were around during those days, we had some struggles. I'll take this any day of the week. I don't have that.
At least we have the grace to be apologetic about it.
And, we're not perfect. Nobody is, but we're trying the best we can with what we have to work with. Yeah.
But to kind of quick back, just to recap here, since that took a little bit to get through, is the idea is all the people participating will have a say in what's happening. And then each of those programs will take any concerns or things that are going on up to that next group up that will make decisions on how everything functions. Again, we want to streamline as much as possible so that if there are lots of groups going on that somebody wants to be involved in, they don't have to remember a bunch of different rules for a bunch of different groups they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I have a handful of questions. The first question I have is, how long has this been in the making? This is just a little bit of some background info.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
You want me to take it, Steve? Yeah.
You take it, and
I'll direct them a little better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Steve.
That's okay.
Steve can correct anything I mess up too. But basically, and this is where our kind of experiences really drove a lot with, like, say, the Kleinmane Assurance Project that Mark put in the chat. Thank you, Mark. And I was very close, Morgan, with the Wildlife World Zoo. I switched the two words. I felt it. I felt like I did, but I wasn't sure. So we had started a captive management program, and basically what you would refer to as a private stud book for the Western Hermann's tortoise. Not really a surprising taxa when you consider Chris Leone's involvement in the Turtle Room over the years. That was around 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Published the first one in 2015, and then Chris and I spoke on it at the TSA conference that summer. Got
it. And I feel like it kind of went until 2017 to 2018, and then kind of ended up becoming defunct, basically because we learned the hard way some lessons along the way. Like, for instance, people, if we're not careful, might use the stud book number and listing as an opportunity to try to sell animals and say, oh, I have a stud book listed animal. So if you want to be a keeper who's doing more with what you keep, you can have this Western Hermann's tortoise for $700, even though the going rate is $550. Or you should buy from me over the other person because I've got the one that's stud book listed. So there was a lot of aggression around give me my stud book numbers because I just hatched some and I need to sell them. That's not why we're doing this. So also with that, animals moved around a lot. People weren't reliable. And it was all those things that happen in the private sector that make people in, the zoological institutions and lawmakers look at us and not see us as being legitimate. So we learned a ton of lessons along the way. And when the amazing group led by Ralph Till and involving other people started to put together the Klein Mountain Insurance Project while we were already working on our ideas here behind the scenes, a lot of those experiences were things that I tried to bring to that discussion. Now, at the same time, a lot of great conversations were happening in KAP, K-A-P, that helped us iron out a lot on that end that I was then able to make sure, we were bringing to this conversation with ACTS, A-C-T-S, within the Turtle Room to make sure that everything is kind of aligned and all these groups have learned from each other. And the last little caveat that's part of that is Steve also worked pretty closely with the folks from the Connexus Cooperative while they were setting up what they had built as well. So there have been a lot of discussions, really starting with that one private stud book back in 2015. And it hasn't stopped since then. It's just kind of gotten hotter and cooler over time at different times, but it's always been something that we've been working on in some form or fashion for over 10 years now.
Right. And then I guess at some point, over the last 8 to 12 months, Damon was starting to get some ideas on his own as well. And so, Damon, why don't you tell us what you were thinking about, and then we can have you and Anthony kind of tie, what kind of the discussions that kind of started then last fall together.
Yeah. So 23 on kind of last minute, I went to TTBG, and it was life-changing, literally. Jeremy, I had got those Connexus, and Jeremy really pushed me to come. And so went back again last year. And there was just lots of discussion, some within the presentations, some within, they didn't do it this past year, but in 23, the Connexus working group had a, what do they call those offshoot?
A workshop.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, breakout.
Breakout
Yeah. So they had a breakout session, and I had been talking with Jeremy some about, I told him that my background and what I do professionally is in database management and also ETL, which is extract, transform, load. Anthony should have worked in tech. It's all acronyms. So that just pretty much means moving data. And that's what I do. I move large amounts of data for a very large corporation that deals in the financial sector. And I've been doing that now, gosh, I don't remember, over a decade. So I had, and I just, with the kind of going to cloud for everything, it's made just starting up ideas so much quicker and easier because you don't have to have dedicated servers like that are actually, in a building somewhere. So I started playing around with just kind of a prototype of a stud book, more or less, or even just like a captive husbandry log. And I had got it functional, and then kind of set it on the back burner. I got it functional quite a bit ago. And then when TTBG was coming up again last year, I was like, oh crap, I need to polish this a little bit because I'd like to show a few people what I was working on. And I showed, it was Ryan, right? I think. Is that correct? Yeah. I showed Ryan which is one of the members of KAP. I had showed him that, and it's like, hey, I've done this. I don't know how y'all are doing your stud book or anything like that, but they had a breakout session, and I attended it, and I showed Ryan after the breakout session. I had made it where I could use it on my iPad because I don't like to tote a laptop around. So I showed him, and then I'm pretty sure he was like, hey, Anthony, you need to come check this out.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Right. So I guess it wasn't awful. And it was, I feel like, now that I've seen Kagorok and things the Turtle Room did, it was a very similar style. I like a minimalist style, very easy to navigate, really minimal. Just, I don't need a lot of buttons. I don't need pictures, that kind of thing. Which my boss sometimes hates. She wants colors. I don't like those, but I like black and white. But yeah, so anyways, and then we just started talking from then on, and he introduced me to Steve. And I had met Chris before that, and because he donated some of the coalians to me. And then we just talked at TTBG quite a bit, not about turtles at all. I think it was mainly about burning stuff. Yeah, burning, controlled burns. I do controlled burns at the property adjacent to me, and so I don't know how we got on the conversation, but I do remember we had about an hour conversation on burning stuff. But yeah, so that's, like I said, and I had talked to Jeremy quite a bit about doing something with Kinixis working group, because I know at some point they would like a stud book. I know that they're just kind of slowed down a little bit there, but yeah. And so once I met Steve, and they kind of filled me in on the project that they've been working on, Axe, and asked if I'd like to help, and yeah, here we are.
I felt like I had to act quickly. I was nervous that if we got going in too many different directions, then people might be married to their own work before we had a chance to collaborate. And I felt like, I had to get your nerd connected with Steve's nerd so that you guys could nerd together if it would work out. And it seems, obviously we're not to the finish line yet, but I think it seems like the projects you were working on should have converged when they did. And I think that this is going to make things a lot more successful. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, at some point here, I need to introduce Damon to Kevin as well. And, because most of we've got our private internal database app, Kaggle Rock, and we also have the public one, Digital Colonial Log, that a few of you still use, which Kevin Labille was and I had done. Kevin had actually done a Windows version of his software at one point, and he and I took that and kind of converted that into Kaggle Rock and Digital Colonial Log. And now, bringing Damon in, we're going to start with building something for Axe, and then we're going to redesign the other things that we have so that they can all talk together. So that way, for people that are participating in the program, they can enter all their stuff in one place, both their private animals, like all their private animals, both the ones that are involved with Axe and the ones that aren't. They can enter all that data in one place, and they only need to do it once to get it into the Axe area as well. So we want to try to make data keeping more accessible for more keepers as a side effect of this project as well. So in addition to, the population management aspects, we also think this will refine the offerings that are out there for the public to have for data keeping for their animals, and kind of level up what everybody is capable and able to do. So.
And Chris, how did you get poached from Anthony into this project?
Well, Steve and I have been talking for many years about map turtles, because he's a map turtle enthusiast, and so am I. And we've always talked about getting organized to, keep records and keep track of where animals are going. And it kind of evolved into this. We've talked about it for several years, and I come from a scientific background. I'm a turtle biologist, so I keep records all the time on my research, and I just think the captive side of things has a lot to offer. A lot of people are breeding turtles, a lot of people are raising turtles, and why not get all this data in one place so publications could possibly arise from this? Scientists publish papers, on the research that they do in the wild. Well, there are many valuable things that could be discovered in captivity that could be used for wildlife research. And I just think it's important that we get people to document a lot of this stuff, like, say, eggs in a clutch, Cohelan box turtles, and the average clutch size in the wild is 2.7 eggs per clutch. In captivity, just from what I've seen from some of the breeders, it's somewhere slightly over 4, like in between 4 and 5 clutches, eggs per clutch. All that is very important. And
as many as 10.
Yes, I mean, yeah, a max size of 10, where in the wild, I believe the max size was 5. In captivity, it's 10. It's just, all this information is out there. It just has to be written down or typed into something, and then, it can be used someday.
Right. And, for those out there, they're like, well, but those are captive animals versus wild animals. And I mean, that's true. But here's the other thing. In the wild, you're only getting, especially for a turtle that's as critically endangered as the Kwajalein box turtle is, right? The sample size really isn't that big to begin with of clutches that you're finding and seeing and all this other stuff. Whereas in captivity, especially with the advent of all of these camera systems that a lot of us have, is you can observe and actually document far more clutches more consistently than you could in the wild. And so, yeah, maybe the wild ones really do have a smaller clutch size because of the lack of resources and all the other aspects that go into it. But at the same time, knowing what's possible can guide how you handle certain aspects of conservation programs as well. So there's a lot we can learn from observing and recording captive animals that you'd never see in the wild unless you attach a camera to the turtle or you have a bunch of cameras watching them from a lot of different spaces. But to guarantee you can see nesting behaviors of a wild turtle, right? You got to kind of get lucky in some regards, where we don't have to get lucky. We're forcing them into a smaller space, and we can stick some cameras on it, and we can watch how they behave when they dig a nest. So we hope we can turn a lot of this data into tools that biologists could possibly use then to do better field science as well.
Right. Some things might never be used, but I'm certain that some things that we record from this can be used, for wild populations, or even a comparison, versus, wild versus captive. And like Steve said, it could show a potential of what an animal is possible of doing.
I'd like to also just add that, a lot of what we do in the private sector is seen as hearsay. So when they could even be captive bred animals that show up on classifieds, and people who make the decisions in our country see that and say, oh yeah, it says captive bred, but I bet they're poached. Yeah, they're captive bred, they're baby spotted turtles, but they probably stole the eggs. Or, whatever. So we know, because we live in this world, that there is a ton of captive breeding happening, but people are scared to share such information because they're scared that people are going to know what they have, know what they do. But we've already seen the negative impact of that when, the Egyptian tortoise is listed on the ESA and that sort of thing. What's happening? Whose hospital bed is that?
I think it's that nice poolside bed of Chris's.
Yeah.
I like it.
I have
luxurious.
I have a little activity I'd like to do. Are you guys game for that?
I love activities, yes.
So we've got 5 groups of animals. I won't say species because we have one group that's a genus. 2 groups that are a genus. I'm looking right now just to make sure I'm not messing things up. So we have five groups, two genera, and 3 species. And those are our ACTS programs to start. We wanted to kind of start with a pilot. Now, in the future, we'd like to grow this, but we definitely need to start with something manageable to start. So if you're thinking, oh, well, they should have chose this other thing, why'd they choose that? I think this is a good time to have that conversation. So I'd like to go through them as a team here and just kind of quickly touch on each one. And also, folks who are tuning in, if you have a species or taxa, genus, subspecies that you think could benefit, maybe we could talk through that as well and just kind of throw that in there. but it gives us an
love
excuse to talk about different animals, which people always used to get, people always get a kick out of, but also keep it within the context of this conversation as well. So let's start with map turtles first, just because we've got a couple map turtle gurus on the call. And I know we've talked about map turtles a lot lately, especially because of Steve's recent success. But why map turtles? Why a whole genus with that many species?
Steve?
I was going to let you go first.
Well, you got 14 species out there. Half of them are federally protected right now, and you got people throughout the country that have little groups of these or individual ones. And, fortunately, many of these can't be legally collected out of the wild now. So people have their little populations, and if people want to keep those going in captivity, it's important to know the other people that are involved in this, and keeping bloodlines unique, like things like Agraptomys, a gibbon's eye, and pearlensis look very much alike. And it would be a shame if there were people out there actually breeding those together. They're very hard to tell apart. You have to have some type of training in order to tell those apart, but it would be important to keep those bloodlines separate so we don't create hybrids. And you could go through several other of the map turtles that live in one river drainage or a couple river drainages. You just want to keep these unique, and I think this X program is a way to organize this, so that the people out there who are producing them actually can prove that they have a valid stock, if they want to share them with others. Now, many of these can't be sold over state lines, and I think the people that have these in captivity, I don't think many of them are that worried about it, because that's not what the point of it was. The point is that they're enthusiasts of that species, and they would like to keep them going, and hopefully they would like to share them with other people.
So another question some people might have, because after we get past Graptomus, we're going to talk about a lot of basically single species type programs. And so the question might be like, why lump them all into one genus? And the reality is, with the Graptomus stuff, there aren't that many Graptomus keepers overall. And typically, if you're keeping one Graptomus, you're probably keeping multiple Graptomus. And so we could have made separate programs for each individual species, but it'd generally be the same people involved with them. And then there would be probably too much representation from Graptomus people into that next level of the group, from that organizational structure, but also, like, why have multiple programs if it's just the same people working together? From a husbandry standpoint as well, one of the great things about Graptomus, as opposed to, say, the box turtles, is if you know what you're doing, you can keep multiple species together without a risk of hybridization, because like the broadhead and a narrowhead naturally occur together, right? And so people can keep these in some multi-species groups without that risk. Whereas if you get into some other species, for instance, like, it could be really easy to create hybrid box turtles, and there's a whole lot more box turtle keepers there as well. And so, that's kind of the difference between, say, why is Graptomus all one program for all 14 species at plus the 15 subspecies, right? Versus Terrapin quahila, where we're just focusing on that one species of the box turtles to start with. So that's kind of, and so some of this is low hanging fruit, right? Especially with a volunteer group, to get a program started, sometimes it's good to start with stuff that you are pretty sure you can have success with. And so we knew we had a core group of people who we'd already been talking to, who love Graptomus and who love Terrapin quahila, and we'll talk about some of the other ones here as we go. But so that's one reason for choosing Graptimus as well. So we knew we were going to be able to find a core group who was excited about this and be willing to share information and animals and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Which I kind of asked that exact question to Steve earlier today. I was asking him, like, because, like you said earlier, Anthony, the idea is to expand from this, hopefully. And, I was asking Steve why, we had the two that were genre versus, this species specific groups. At first, if you're someone who kind of looks for patterns and things like that, naturally, it just kind of jumps out at you, right? You're like, why is it different there?
Yeah, and we try to take it as a case by case. And I kind of like the way that they're kind of around the board a little bit, because it gives us a better understanding of what will work well, So with each of these, we have the reasons we chose them, but we also have some areas of challenge or some hurdles with each one. And I think with Graptimus, it's going to be the sheer volume. Like, it has the most people involved, it has by far the most species involved. So it's going to be more to keep track of. The good news is that Damon, Chris, and Steve are all involved, and others who are maybe a little more data driven than some others of us. So that's a good thing. But each one of them comes with their own challenges. So don't forget, I said you could throw other thoughts in the chat if you wanted to, folks. But you were already talking about the Queensland box turtles, so let's go there next. So I think them and Kleinmannei to some degree, and some of the Graptimus, 7 of the Graptimus specifically, because they're all on the ESA, is an interesting case study for involvement in something like this, because people who are keeping them naturally are not going to be in it for the money to a very large extent. So they're going to be looking for places to place their animals, and they're going to want to place their animals with people who are serious, and they're going to want to maybe keep track of the whole population, maybe work together with other people who are producing those. So with Cohelans, that was a really great thing. And I think when we look at them and Kleinmannei, there's a lot of similarities between those two, because you have 2 ESA species that are popular, that people have wanted for a really long time, and that are also genetically potentially bottlenecked to some degree. So we need to keep track of, as a community, keep track of the population and do everything we can to get the right bloodlines into the population however we can. The way that the AZA has done that with a lot of species, or at least tried to do that with a lot of species, not just within turtles, but everything. Tigers, lions, and bears, oh my. So we have an opportunity here to do more and be better, right? Which is the most important thing. So those two kind of fit together. Anyone have anything to say on those ones?
I mean, I think it is interesting. And, my question, I guess, is, did you gravitate towards those from, like, the lessons learned you were talking about earlier with the Western Hermans? Because, even if you're in a state that doesn't have those and you can legally sell within your state, it's not going to be long before, that market's dried up. Right. So,
Right.
Just naturally with those listings, it's taken away that, hey, look at my stud book animal. And so, is that one of the takeaways from those lessons learned, and how maybe
subconsciously, possibly?
Yeah. And it's okay. Just to be clear too, because I would be wondering this if I was on the other end listening to this conversation. We are not telling anyone that they have to give animals away. If you could sell every single one of X species you provide, and that's what you want to do, that's great. But let's still get organized. Let's have conversations, and let's do everything we can to try to make the right decisions for the animals. I think if, someone had a really important animal in their group and continued to just send every single offspring to the highest bidder without caring about where they end up, I think we'd have some systemic problems, disagreements within the group, because we're all trying to come together with a common goal of doing what's right for these taxa. So that's a great call, though, Damon, for sure.
I think that keeping track of the bloodlines, like you said, with Kleinmani and Coahuila is very important, simply because, I don't know of any smuggled Kleinmani or Coahuilan box turtles that have arrived in the country and, were intercepted and sent out to people. I think the ones we have here are the ones that we have here. Like
right.
The Coahuilan box turtles, all came from the Fort Worth Zoo, which gave some to the Gladys Porter Zoo, and then they got in the private sector after that. I've never even heard of, a real wild caught one being in the country. Besides that, I've heard rumors of that. So the ones we got here are the ones we got. So we got to be very careful about how inbred these animals are. And I know that the stud book, the AZA stud book, does have blood samples on a lot of them, but I think the captive side, in the private sector, should be doing something like that as well. And I know Ralph said that the last time Kleinmani were imported in the country was about 20 years ago. So, the ones that are here are the ones that are here. Whereas these map turtles, they are found in the United States. You can't collect them out of the wild anymore. But, every now and then these get caught up in some type of confiscation. And then they end up going into private hands. So those are new ones that could enter into private hands. So that's a little different.
Yeah, I've got a pair of those here. It's exactly how they got here.
Right.
Confiscated by Fish and Wildlife, at an airport, and
right.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's funny. You think, okay, we've got these 5 groups, similar situation, and it's just not. So hopefully that'll be helpful with looking at this as a pilot and a case study for what will work going forward. And if things are really firing on all cylinders with those ESA species that we have involved in this, then maybe we look to work with some other ESA species that we think might need it. But if it's the map turtles, then maybe it's something else. So the challenge, again, with those 2 will be the genetic bottleneck. So there's definite reasons to do this, but that's going to be the challenge. So next up, let's go to Forstenii or Forstenii, the Forsten's tortoise from Sulawesi. That is a very critically endangered tortoise species that is racing towards extinction, but that has also been imported to the U.S. quite a bit. And I could hear Ben Forrest, my friend Ben Forrest, in my ear right now, just saying, I wish somebody would care about this species, And he actually is involved with Axe, and I just bring it up because I think it's a really cool kind of full circle thing. He started the AZA stud book when he was at Memphis Zoo, maybe 22, 23 years ago, something like that. So
yeah, it's been a while.
And now, as the AZA is not working with private folks like they used to in terms of SSPs. We used to be a part, Steve, TurtleRoom folks used to be a part of like 10 different SSPs at one point. And we're not anymore. We don't get calls and we don't get asked for updates anymore. We're just like basically booted out of the SSPs. So this is our opportunity to continue that great work. Ben's not working in zoos anymore, but he obviously knows what goes into that because he did it at the AZA. He actually started it. So Forstens do have new champions. There are people in the US who are breeding them more than Ben does. Ben used to be really the premier breeder. He's not necessarily anymore, but he's still working with them and breeding them. So this is an opportunity for maybe the next generation of Forstens experts to step up. So that's really cool.
Really excited about some of the people involved in that one too. Like Michaela and Steven are both very young, very passionate about that species. And then you've got Ben who's still involved with it, and Andrew Hermes is going to be involved with it, but definitely excited for what what could come out of that group with the history there, with Ben and all that. So that was another one of those where it just felt like a natural fit. We knew we had some people who'd be really excited to get involved in there. And it's a species that we've got some history with at the organization. And it's a species that's super critically endangered. And it just felt like a really nice fit to launch with.
Yeah, they really need it too. Now, the problem with them is it's tough to attract new keepers with Forsenine because they're not super fun to keep. So think of the other species from Sulawesi, the Leucocephalon yuanawai. Like they're big, they're smelly, and they hate each other and they want to kill each other. And Forsenine, they don't need as much water, so maybe they're not as smelly, but they're just. I had Forsenine and I was really excited to keep them. And then my wife saw them, combating and beating the crap out of each other. And she's like, I hate these tortoises. They make me so anxious. And I'm like, please don't tell me that. Like it broke my heart that she was totally against the species and whatever. And that's why we don't keep them now, because she just hated them with a passion. So anyway, not to speak poorly about my wife at all. We just, they're not for everyone, I think. So, but they need champions. So the people who do dedicate to them the time and space, it's great.
And the funny thing is, when we first started talking about this, and the cap wasn't a part of it, so I only keep one of the species in the programs, and two of those are pretty much out for me due to the large bodies of water, which there's some map turtles I could definitely set some stuff up for here pretty easily. But the Forsen tortoise, that's one that's been on my radar for quite a while, actually. It's just a matter of indoor space. In
the winter,
because it's most of my indoor space is taken up with the Conyxus. So when the fair eye finally get moved and my back is broken, there'll be some indoor space there.
That's good.
And if you've been to TTBG and heard Steven talking about him, he should be the salesman. He's so big.
Yes.
That's that everything about them is stuff I like with what I keep. I like those tortoises that need it a little bit more humid and more of a jungle tortoise, forest tortoise, versus
me too. They're fun to feed too.
Right. I've seen the videos. They're wild.
They can get a little cold. I think they're great. It's just that combative piece. So little enclosures for individual animals instead of a big enclosure where they're kept together. Otherwise, they're going to be smacking shells and biting each other. There was that article that Michaela wrote for the Badiger years ago, 2016, 2017, about the Black Widow Forsten's tortoise, the female that was biting the heads off of her male quarters, like a praying mantis. Gotta be careful. It's rough out there for a Forsten's tortoise.
I think my wife would get a kick out of their behavior towards one another if only we had the space for it.
Until there's blood everywhere. Oh my gosh.
Just get a bunch of poultry and you'll be immune to that kind of stuff. The males are just, I have so much, I have a lot of different poultry species, and males never get along, and they're rough during breeding season. Ducks, especially. I have a lot of ducks. I love ducks. But you get kind of immune to that stuff pretty easily. I have pigs too, and they can be pretty combative males.
Yeah, at least you grew up out in the middle of nowhere, butchering your own chickens and deer and whatever else. So, I think she'd get a kick out of them just not being happy too close to other people, because sometimes she's that way too. So, I think she'd feel a kinship with them.
I want to bite my husband's head off too. That's what she would say. The last one is actinemes. Nobody's adding any in the chat, but that's okay. The last one is actinemes, which is the Pacific pond turtles. There's arguably a bunch of different ones, but officially there are two species. So there's the northwestern pond turtle and the southwestern pond turtle, Actinemes pallida. I don't know of anyone who's currently breeding the southwestern pond turtle in the U.S. So technically, this is for the genus, but all we have is 2 breeders who are breeding the northern species, Actinemes marmorata. Now, these used to be 2 subspecies, but now they're full species. So the problem with the issue with this one, the challenge with this one is we don't have enough people. So, I mean, that's a reason right there. So again, we have this kind of smattering of different issues within each of these programs that will kind of let us know where we can make the biggest impact, or maybe we can make an impact in all of them. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but there's not a lot of breeders. There's 2, and hopefully we can grow that. And one thing that I always talk about I've talked about ad nauseum with Ralph Till, the founder of the Conmana Insurance Project, that's a part of this act again, is if any of us are successful as breeders, and I know I've talked to Chris Lekowitz about this too, for sure. If any of us are successful as breeders, we would have created 5 to 10 breeders that could take it to the next level in the future. So if I don't do that, if I'm just looking for a couple bucks and I'm not, you could sell, although, you know, some of us don't like to sell, or don't sell all the time, or don't sell everything, or don't sell anything, depending on who you're talking about here. But regardless of that, regardless of how things go out, depending what species it is too, are we actually caring about where these are ending up? In terms of setting someone up to be successful, to not only do what I do, but to do better than I do in the future. And like I said, I want, depending on the species, maybe it's really tough, like Actinemes, maybe it's 3 people. But with a lot of these species, like the Coquillin box turtle, I think Chris Lekowitz will absolutely create multiple people that could take over and take it to the next level. I don't think that's going to be a rare turtle in the future. And there are several turtle species that I think are kind of moving down that trajectory right now.
So why do you think the pond turtles, because I'm not terribly familiar with them myself, why do you think they have those challenges of not having many keepers? Is it because there's just not a lot of animals to go around, or what are the other challenges, I guess?
I think it's because they're racist. Not the people, the turtles. So they're a pond turtle, and what do people do with pond turtles? The vast majority of them put pond turtles, cohab them in a little pond and let them do their thing, and a lot of times that works. Sliders, cooters, to some degree, painted turtles all do okay mixing, cohabbing with other species, although I do think some painted turtles struggle with that more than others. Actinemes do not tolerate that at all. They just see another turtle that's not like them and they die. So it's go ahead.
So I don't know if I shared it on my Facebook page. There's some science published out of Yosemite about the invasive bullfrogs basically just decimating the hatchlings of the Pacific pond turtle, right? And so they finally removed all them, and the turtles are returning. And like, that's Pacific pond turtles. Like, if something that is not supposed to be in their environment is in their environment, they're just like.
And people say like, oh, but I don't understand. They're like rock solid. They live in like cattle troughs, and I get it. They just really can't see. I don't know. This is obviously hyperbolic, but it is based on experiences and what happens with people. Like, you can't mix them with a bunch of stuff and expect them to be to do well.
They don't like competing. They can live in a lot of weird places, but they don't like competing for resources, I think, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. I don't know. And whatever don't like means, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's some kind of, they're really prone to diseases and pathogens and parasite loads that other turtles have, or they're just so prone to stress that just seeing another turtle, you know, shocks the heck out of them, and they're just like a, you know, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo moment, and they just keel over. But it's, I mean, to me, it feels more like the latter, or maybe it's the resources that they're not getting because they're a little less of an athletic pond turtle species than, say, a red-eared slider. I don't know, but I will tell you that they just don't do well in cohab situations. I didn't really have a lot of success with them until I just kept them in their own thing. This is the Actinemes area, and nothing else is going to live in there besides the frogs that show up when I build it.
As long as they're not bullfrogs.
I was about to say, the frogs are
I was
bad.
gonna say the same thing.
But I'm not letting babies ground hatch. So
Right.
yeah, because bullfrogs are a very big issue for but it's for the babies. Unless I'm missing something.
Are you gonna? So you talked a little bit about genetic testing and obviously keeping track of everything through the stud book. But is there going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, microchipping. Are you going to be microchipping so you can make sure you know what individual is what and who's going to who and that sort of thing? Especially for groups that turtles that are going to be living in big groups, something like that.
Microchipping will be kind of on the, any microchipping or notching will be kind of person to person's preference of what they want to do so they can identify the turtles. We will be assigning, numbers to the turtles for the stud book, but how a keeper wants to choose to, keep them straight is kind of up to them. So.
Okay.
And animals don't necessarily stay within the group just because they were produced. So, like, let's say I produced 20 Coquillon box turtles. That would be awesome, but I don't think I will. But if I did, just because I produce those 20 doesn't mean 20 animals go into the stud book, because I can choose to do with them whatever I want. But I should keep track of how many I hatch, how many eggs I had, fertility rates, clutch size, all that sort of stuff, so we can start to build this, pool of information together. And then also I should try to choose folks that they should go to. And this is something we talk through a lot on the Kleinmannei side. Wonderful conversations on that. And we've also, spoken about that like at the TTPG last year. And Ryan will be presenting on that at TSA, which is very exciting. Ryan is a member of CAP as well. And he did a great job representing us at TTPG. So basically, the idea is that just because we produce these animals doesn't mean they stay within the stud book. They go out, into the world, and maybe that becomes an opportunity for us to kind of test out other people that could end up becoming a part of the group in the future. And also we can just keep them as what we ended up calling network members as well, where like those animals are a part of the population, but they're not coming, the people don't have to come to the meetings and that sort of thing, but we can check in and see how the animals are doing. So there's a lot of options around what happens with the animals and building the network and the pool, the stud book that involves all the animals. But what happens with the overall numbers is really dependent on what happens with, individual keepers. And apparently
so
Mark knows. Oh, racist turtles. You got
it. Yeah. So one of the other things to think about too, from a genetic standpoint, we don't need 40 of the same genetic pairing, kind of tracked long term, right? So yeah, ideally you're sharing some of those with some of the other keepers in the program, but like, again, we don't need 20, 30, 40 of the same thing, all in the program. So ideally you're giving some away outside of the program too, because, that also, allows space and resources to have diversified bloodlines over time, instead of just being like, we're keeping all 40 of these offspring in the program that these two turtles have hatched over the last 4 or 5 years or whatever. That lessens resources for other bloodlines as well. So that's an important consideration as well. And
Totally.
we're not. So that's the thing. We're not requiring specific things for keepers as far as the dispensation of offspring, what happens to them. We do expect over a period of time that some of those offspring go to other keepers in the program, whether that's by selling or giving, it doesn't matter, right? But then plenty of the offspring can go outside of the program, because the program doesn't need all the offspring from a single genetic pairing. It just doesn't. That's the simple genetic science, essentially. So,
Well said.
Yeah, and I just have one more question, and I guess maybe I should have asked this a bit earlier because we are running out of time. But you mentioned before that the Turtle Room and a lot of the members used to be affiliated with AZA. And I know AZA has their SSP and ZAA has their AMPS, AMP, Animal Management Plan. Is there some kind of relation to ACTS and AZA kind of removing the private sector from the SSP? Is this kind of a response to that, or you just saw that there was a need for this and just went for it? I don't know if that was like 3 questions.
Yeah, no, I don't know that it was a response to that necessarily, because I don't think a bunch of other private keepers are going to get into, even while the AZA was working more with certain private keepers, I don't think it was going to be something that a lot more people were going to be jumping into, because if you become really deep members of that, they're going to be expecting certain things that happen. Trading adult animals to create different bloodlines, gifting animals to other institutions, and depending on the zoo, like they don't necessarily reciprocate, because a lot of the zoos, like there isn't one straight set of AZA guidelines for what zoos do with their animals that they own. Some zoos are more willing to send something to a private keeper on loan or give it to them outright. Others won't touch it, right? And so there's a lot of inconsistency there as well. So this isn't directly you stopped letting us play in your sandbox, we're doing this thing. I think this thing needed to happen regardless for the private side to be able to start demonstrating that all those things that Anthony was talking about at the beginning, that they can keep good data, that we can learn things from it, that there's evidence of the success we're having, and it's not just hearsay. We're collecting information and data. And I mean, it's still like word of mouth in some ways, right? But nobody's going to be spending the time to fudge the, annual measurements and all this other stuff just because they want to fake how many eggs they're hatching. It's too much work, right? For somebody who just wants to make it up.
Yeah.
That was a great answer. I was kind of formulating my answer, and then that was perfect. I have no response.
Okay. Well, then how about my final question? And this can go out to any of you, so any of you feel free to answer. What are the next steps for ACTS? What's it look like in the upcoming months and within the next year? What's it look like?
I'm learning how to measure my turtles correctly. That's actually the only reason I joined. I'm not very good with measuring my turtles, and I need to know how. So,
so for some people, that's the next step they're working on, actually. And so one of the things we do want to do is we want to collect data once a year, essentially, is what we're asking people. And it doesn't have to be at a specific time of year, just once a year. And then once the database is up and running, it'll remind you, oh, you're coming up on a year, So for some people, it's literally that. Damon and I also need to get working more on the database stuff as we have more time start to come available in the summer. For each of the groups, or for some of the groups anyway, it might be selecting the person who's going to be that representative to that bigger, or to that next level up committee. And so we have a bunch of these like internal next steps that each participant kind of has their own next step they're working on, depending on where they are on some of this stuff. And from a big perspective, I'd say that the big next step is to kind of get this all together and get these 5 programs kind of running. And then be like, okay, what kind of things do we need to learn? And then maybe start going, okay, this is another species that would benefit from this. Eventually, by the way, while I did say that our first wave here is invite only, eventually we're going to have an application process somebody could go through to be able to become a member of ACTS and essentially contribute to these programs as well.
It's cool, right?
Anthony, Chris, anything else to add in there, Damon?
No, I mean, it's just, we are asking that you measure your animals once a year. And I know some people get afraid of that, but it's not really as bad as it sounds. And, it is kind of neat to see over the years the growth of your turtles, and in the app that the Turtle Room has, it can show it on a graph. It's really cool to see that, and you could see the difference in the growth of a male versus female. Just interesting stuff, and it's like I said, it's things that can be published.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
for
I'm
sure.
just excited. Like on a real note, I'm just excited for people to start. Once we start getting this data added, and like Steve said, developing the data, the back end, and connecting to the front end. And just excited to get all that data. I'm a massive data nerd. I love large sets of data. That's kind of how I fell into the job I have. But I do it with lots of things. I mean, I used to be massively into fantasy sports and gave up because that sucked too much time in my life. So I don't play them or watch sports really anymore. But yeah, I'm just excited to get that data. And I mean, I think a lot of great things will come of it. Especially once we have more of it, and like I said, it starts to become available to people. And it'll be really cool when we kind of see that first journal article that's written, and it references the Axe data. I mean, I think that'll be really special. And to me, that'll be when we, at least from my perspective, that'll be when we know we've kind of got it working, right? When it's taken serious. Because I know people have probably listened to Ralph on some podcasts, and regardless of your opinion on the ESA listing of Egyptians, I think he makes a lot of really valid points that you probably don't think about, that didn't really have the data, or didn't have it to a degree that other groups did. The private sector didn't have that data, and that is kind of one of the things that had me start to look at when I was kind of playing around with the prototype, and also seeing what people are doing in Europe. They have that European stud book, and it's not just turtles; they do it with other reptile species. I just think that that's what I'm excited for, is just getting that data and starting to work with it and look at it, and hopefully, like I said, when it's published in a journal article, I think that'll really tie the ribbon on it, so to say.
I'm going to add, I think meeting more often. I'm looking forward to with the newer groups. With the Climana group, we've met like 30 times, but these other groups have only met a couple times. So meeting more often and getting those other groups off the ground, and building a community, and also solidifying this community, bringing it to a next level, is really important. I think the days of just being a keeper are over for a lot of us. It's sad because I'll read Reptiles magazine from like the 90s or the early 2000s, and I'm like, man, I used to just read this and just get excited about the stuff I wanted to keep, and it was so much simpler then. Our rights are being taken away, and sometimes rightfully so, because we're sloppy, and I know that that's going to piss people off. I'm so sorry, but if you don't like it, if you don't like hearing that, be better and be a part of the solution. And if hearing that makes you want to crawl under a rock and not be a part of it, then that's your choice. But I'm here, and I want to collaborate, and I want to try to do the right thing. And I don't want to just be a hobbyist. A lot of I don't like the word hobbyist, and maybe I'm starting to not like the word keeper either. I'm an advocate, and I'm going to get out and advocate for what I'm passionate about, and I'm going to use my knowledge base that I built as a keeper and starting out as a hobbyist to advocate for what I believe is right, not for me, not my rights, but what's right for the animals. And so, think about things in that way. Think critically about those things, about what's best for the animal, not just what's best for you. And then also, start to think about coming forward, working with others to make the world a better place for these species, because they need it from all directions. And the people that are on the other side that are saying what we do doesn't count, we can't just say they're crazy and continue to let things become polarized the way things are in like American politics. We need to do everything we can to try to reach across the aisle to the people that we don't necessarily see eye to eye with. But we need to be multifaceted. We need to be multimodal in our approach. So who's with me?
And if you are, go keep racist turtles. they need help.
They do. They definitely do.
There's a message from Mark in the chat. The evidence and data keeping is what's going to make ACTS stand out and be more respectable in herpetology. I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Mark.
Totally. Totally. We got to take it to the next level together. And this is what was missing before. I think we can do it to I think we already are doing it to new levels, but I think, it's like technology. It doesn't just go like this. It kind of, there's this bell curve where we've got momentum, TTPG is growing. I'll be going to TSA this year for the first time, which is crazy, but it's all part of that. Like we need to just connect more on a larger level. As great as TTPG is, and I love it so much, we need to step out of that comfort zone. If I'm talking to the keeper crowd right now, and get to some other folks who maybe don't really see eye to eye all the time.
Yeah.
The keeper side.
Well, that was the top secret. That was
it.
There it is.
That's a good secret.
Cats on the
look forward
back.
to hearing more in coming days. So before we go, some quick recaps. I'm going to talk about this one real quick once more. The Core Pictorata shirt. Check it out at that link. It's available midnight tonight. That's 3.5 hours. All right. Not a lot of time. If you want to grab one, now's your chance. And then it goes bye-bye. Emily, I'm going to let you talk about this other thing real quick before we go. I think it's real important to hit this on too. So here we go.
Yeah, so our nonprofit at Riverside, it's called CE Reptile Rescue. We collaborated with the Turtle Room and with H2O Planet, which is a brand new nonprofit, for a World Turtle Day celebration. And our live event was this past Friday, and we raised over $700, which is really nice. And we still have one more event going on right now. It is an online auction. And if you go to the link that we have below, it's on biddingforgood.com. You just want to search H2O Planet. We have a ton of stuff on there. There's some personal items that I made. I made 2 blankets, 1 quilt. Please bid on it. And all of the money that we make from this live auction, or I'm sorry, this online auction, is going to be split between our 3 nonprofits. So a portion is going to go to the Turtle Room as well. So if you have a chance, just pop on there. Look around, browse. We were joking before that there's some nerdy stuff on there. So if you were also a Trekkie like Steve and I, there's stuff there for you. If you like, I think there's some alcohol on there. There are blankets. There are amusement park tickets. So there's something for everyone on there. Go ahead, check it out. That's my plug.
Thank you. And the event was great. It was great. All for turtles. Lots of turtle education, a lot of shaking hands, kissing babies, that sort of thing. It was a good time. So Thank you to Riverside for hosting, and thank you to Laura from H2O Planet for doing a lot. Not that you guys didn't do a lot, but I did not do it. I could speak for myself and say I did not do a lot. But I'm happy to be there and to take part in the festivities that way.
Yeah, you were a good Turtle Room representative. So.
Any last words, Chris or Damon?
I don't have any.
No, I don't have any. But I would advise people to look into ACTS. It's the next step in herpetoculture as far as turtles. Hopefully, it can move on to other taxa, but I think we should give this a good go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add one last thing. I know that we're done. We did put in our verbiage that this was not supposed to be like a replacement for the TTPG CPP program and that sort of thing. We talked to everyone at the TTPG to make sure that we weren't stepping on any toes there. We see this as an opportunity to work in concert with them, and there are several TTPG directors who are involved in ACTS as well. So this is very much a partnership. That's all we ever want to do is just partner and help in any way that we can. It's tough being all volunteer run sometimes to make that happen because everyone's time and resources are limited. But, we're very proud of that. And I just want to put that disclaimer out there because it was very important to us throughout this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, thanks, everyone.
That's it.
Keep yours healed.